Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and in this episode we are going to finally have a look at Harry's engine bay and make sure everything is completely buttoned up. Okay, you guys have watched me put this engine bay together over quite some time, and we are getting very close, but there's still a few little things that we need to finish off. One of the main ones is I actually have the breather off of the engine, which is right here. It's probably hard to see at this angle, but the breather tube comes out here and it has to go over and breathe into the oil tank. And then, of course, the oil tank needs to breathe itself. And from the oil tank, what I need to add on is I'm going to add on a catch can. Now, this is the catch can I'm going to use. You are supposed to recirculate them, and I may end up doing that depending on what I need to do. But for the time being, this is what I'm going to fit up. The Raceworks have hooked me up with a catch can and a bunch of fittings and stuff. But the issue I have is that they don't have AN fittings that are big enough to take this 1-inch line or 25mm line, which is quite a big fitting for a barb fitting that I need, because I've got to run a hose across to the oil tank and then another hose over to this. So I'm going to mount this catch can back over here in the engine bay, about there somewhere. So let's start having a look and see what I can do about making this fit the spot. Okay, so now you can see I've fitted in the breather hose from the breather through to the oil tank. It's a monster of a hose. It's just such a big diameter once you get obviously 25mm internal and it's thick enough and rated for the oil and fuel. That is quite a big thing, and I did actually Raceworks actually sent me these pretty sort of they're dress rings, so it's actually a hose clamp, but it looks like an AN fitting. It's quite a nice way to sort of tidy up the engine bay, which I was going to fit on the ends of the clamp, but even this monster thing is too small for the hose. I thought I could possibly even shave the hose down. It's not going to fit. It's not going to look right. So I'm just going to have to use regular hose clamps, and I mean, they're reasonably well hidden there anyway. It's not that bad, but I just thought this would be prettier, but they don't fit. This is just so huge compared to most modern cars that don't seem to have breathers that are quite that big. Anyway, that one's done, so now it's time to start working out where I'm going to actually fit my oil catch can and work out a mount for it. Okay, so I've worked out that where I'm going to fit my catch can into the car, but to connect it up to the breather, I need to be able to get it to attach to this massive 25mm hose. Now, I looked into a bunch of different methods, and one of the big issues was, as I mentioned, I couldn't get AN fittings or any fittings really that would fit up to 25mm. I could have played around and used some different adapters from plumbing fittings in different thread types, and it just would have been messy and difficult. I thought the neatest, easiest way to make it all work was to actually get myself some 25mm aluminium tube that I can weld onto the catch can, and then I can connect straight up to this. That's the plan. So this is what I've got. So this is the right size, obviously 25mm tube. It's a little bit thinner than I wanted, but this is all I could get. So this is what I'm going to use. And now it's time to start cutting a bit off of this and just have a bit of a play to start with and just see if I can get my TIG welding good. I'm not that great at TIG welding aluminium. I haven't had that much practice, and this is very thin, so it's going to create some, it's going to make it fun. Let's put it that way. All right, I've tried to cool this down a little bit, and it's look, it's not pretty, but it is fully welded on all the way around. I don't know if this is going to focus very well, but it's quite passable. I am not a great TIG welder by any means, and particularly not on aluminium. I've only done it sort of once before. Really, is one other go. proper go at doing it. But yeah, once I got the heat into the thicker material on the bottom, I just sort of had to heat the bottom up first, and then I could sort of get them to work together. But before there was heat in it, it was, yeah, the top would melt and the bottom wouldn't do anything. So anyway, now it's time to try on the real deal. So let's start cleaning up my catch can and see if I can actually weld a nice pretty bung onto the end of this. Okay, so I've tidied up the fitting on the end so it's nice and clean, and cut off my piece and just made it nice and neat and tidy as well. Now I've cut it on an angle at the end because I want it to be pointing up and towards the inside of the car a little bit. It'll just make it easier for the hose to fit. So that's the angle I'm going to weld it onto it on. I could weld a bead around the outside to give it something for the hose clamp to clamp onto. I could also, I've seen there's methods of modifying sort of crimping pliers and things like that, and you can actually go around and crush basically a bead into the end of the tube. But in this case, it's low pressure breather. It's not going to be running the risk of the hose sliding off. I think a hose clamp on a smooth fitting is going to be fine. So I will just weld it on like it is. So let's see how I go. I might try and get some heat into this first, see if I can heat this up a bit, so that then hopefully this will weld on without just turning into a molten piece of mess. Well, that is definitely not the prettiest welds. It's pretty ugly, particularly on this this inside bit in here. I couldn't really get the torch in there, so there's some pretty ugly welds in there. But it's more than enough for this purpose, and it's going to be hidden by the end of the hose anyway, so it's not that important. But the most important thing is that I actually have the fitting on the end for the catch can. That's a good thing. So now let's go and see if I can work out how to actually mount it in the engine bay. Alright, so now I've got my catch can. I need to work out exactly how I'm going to fit it and mount it, and just make sure that my fitting lines up. So I'm going to trim my hose here and get it to just the right length, see if I can actually connect it up, and then work out a way to actually mount it. Okay, and that all fits in there quite nicely. So I'll take it off now and I'll show you exactly what I've did. Okay, so that is all mounted up, or at least one point is mounted up quite nicely now. Basically all I did is marked out what I needed. I made a little bracket out of a piece of angle iron, which I then hammered out so it's not quite 90 degrees anymore. Then I got out my trusty riv nuts and put a riv nut in here. It's quite clear of the tyre. It's not going to rub the tyre or anything. Mounted that in there, and then to put another riv nut into the bracket itself so that it's I can bolt one side straight into the body, and then bolt this tab on the side of the catch can straight into my little bracket. So that all fits up beautifully. So that is one mounting point down. Now the other mounting point that's factory on this is on the side, because obviously it's designed to go against a firewall or something, and it's not going to sort of work in my situation. But I also had the issue that if I'm going to put this in the car, I want to be able to drain it. Now, it does have a factory sort of bung in the bottom, which is quite large, and also it's not really in the right spot. Because of the way I've got this, I want to have a bung off the side, and I'm actually also thinking that it would be nice to actually have a tap in it. Okay, so my plan to drain this is you can always just unbolt it, take it out and tip it out every few months or so. But I wanted to do this in a way that was much easier to control, and my idea for doing it is obviously this current drain plug that's on here is just not accessible the way I've got it set up in the engine bay. It's sitting over the top of the rail. There's no way to get to it. But I went scrabbling through Raceworks catalogue, and they actually have a ball valve here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a weld-on AN6 fitting that I'm going to weld on to the back corner of the bottom of this catch can. And once I've welded that on, then I can just have a tap in there, right in the back corner of the engine bay. I can have a hose coming out, just down sort of out of the way, in front of the exhausts, lower than the exhaust so that it's not going to drip on the exhaust or anything. And I can just flick the tap every so often and just drain everything out, close it off, and it's nice and easy maintenance. That's the key. So I'm going to now drill my hole and start trying to weld in my little weld-in fitting. All right, more ugly welding, but it's done the job. So it's all on there now. It's all nicely welded on. I don't think that is going to leak at all. There's definitely no sign of any pinholes, so I think that's nice and secure. So now it's time to let it cool off a little bit, but before I do that, I actually have an extra tab on the other side that I need to get rid of. So I'm going to go through now. I'm just going to grind it off and make it look nice and flat and smooth, because we don't need this tab just hanging off in the middle of the engine bay. Okay, so the catch can's all looking good, and while it is drying up, I need to get over and start making up my AN lines to actually connect it all up. So I've got AN lines around, so I'm using the fuel hose that I used on Harry's engine. So it's the same stuff, simple fittings with the little olive inside. I'll quickly go through. I've got to make a really short piece. I need to make this basically as short as physically possible on this, to join these two pieces, just because there isn't, I don't actually have a female to female thread, so I'm going to have to sort of use a bit of hose in between. A female to female would be quicker. I just did an auto one, so that will get me out of trouble. So let's get that done, and let's just make the last little bit of hose. All right, and there we have it. We've got my catch can all finished up. So I've got my inlet, I've got my breather, and I've got my outlet. So basically I've just got a short length of AN-6 line here, and my little ball valve on the end here. It's actually, Raceworks have got a mark saying flow going the other way, but it's a ball valve, so it'll work in either direction fine. And I can just open that up, drain out the oil buildup or whatever in there, and then I can knock it off, and I can do that, you know, every now and then when I want to. And I've left this length of hose a bit longer underneath so that I can poke it down under the car, put it out of the way somewhere, and trim it off to the length I want, so that whenever I want to actually drain it, I can just get under there with a container, open the ball valve, drain it out, close it up, and it's good for another how long. So all right, now it's time to actually get this into the car and see if I can actually have it all sitting there and it all works the way it's intended to. Okay, so now it's sitting in here in the back of the engine bay. It is sitting on a bit of an angle, and unfortunately there's not a lot I can do about that because of the tension in this big hose here, because it still has to turn quite a sharp angle. There wasn't an easy way to do it. Maybe I can get myself a bend or something for this thing later, or maybe I can weld one up. Oh, maybe that might be the answer, is actually weld up a 90-degree angle for that big hose so that it'll actually do the corner. Although it does mess with my OCD, it's not a big issue because it will be mostly hidden in the engine bay, because now we get to do the bit that I've been looking forward to for quite some time, and that is actually finally fitting my beautiful air filters with my bell mounts, and it's going to look good. So let's start getting this all ready now to fit up my filters. So I got out my beautiful air filter covers that I've made up before, and I was quite disappointed to find out that the silicone did not stick. It did not want to stick at all to the Perspex. I'm realising now that I probably should have gone around and sanded this, and also I probably didn't, there might have been a little film on it or something like that beforehand, but either way, the silicone didn't work. I think I'm going to actually use some of the black Sikaflex stuff that will definitely stick this down, so I think that's what I'm going to try this time. I'll give it a quick sand and do that, but I think I can still fit my filters and deal with the Perspex part of it separately. They look really good. I am very happy with how they look. But we still have to fix the tops up. I really hate doing things twice, but let's get those Perspex covers siliconed in properly once and for all. Okay, so obviously the silicone I used didn't stick at all to either side very well. Even on the fiberglass under here, it didn't really stick that great. So I'm going to go through now, I'm going to peel it all out, and then I'm going to key up all of the edges of the Perspex with a bit of sandpaper here, so it gives it something to grip onto, and I'm not going to use that silicone again. So I'm going to do the Perspex, sand it in the fiberglass, make sure I've got a nice keyed up surface so there's something to bond to, and then we'll try sticking them together again, and hopefully this time it's for good. Well, I think that should be a much more secure bond on the Perspex now. I don't think that's going to go anywhere, so I'm going to have to leave that set up, and I can finally button these things up and put these on later in the week. But that is all I have time for today. Now, there are a couple of things I still need to do, but I think I'm getting close to the time where I can actually start trying to program the ECU. I do have to add in some fuses. I'm not sure exactly of the amperage of each fuse that I need to put in, but I'm pretty sure the fuses for the two banks of coil packs, I'm going to go for about 15 amps each from my rough research, and probably a 5 amp fuse for the ECU itself. And can't remember if it was a 5 or 10 amp fuse I think I worked out for the fuel pump. But if any of you have suggestions on that, let me know, because I don't really know. But I think it might be time to start programming that ECU, and we're getting much closer to starting it. But hopefully you've enjoyed that another round. I really enjoy having a go at TIG welding. It's a new skill that I like practicing. If you are enjoying it, please like the video and subscribe if you haven't. You can always follow us on Patron to watch your videos a day early, get some merch and all that sort of stuff. And research your Porsche parts, get price comparisons at Porsche Parts by Jeff. Alright guys, see you next time. See ya. So of course I couldn't leave it alone, and I did get in there and I sorted out the old catch can. That is sitting much squarer in the engine bay, sorted out my OCD quite a bit, and I fitted the air filter caps, and how good does this engine bay look? Oh, it looks so nice.